Alright, let's see how this goes. That's pretty close. So I'm looking at this. One of the weird things about these OffRoadTown lights is they don't give you a left and a right, and the pigtail comes out of one side, and they're always coming out of that side. Well, I'm just looking at it, and I'm like, well, they actually gave you 3 different sizes of Allen wrench, hex wrenches here. And that's what this is held on with. So let's take a look and see what's inside. Maybe it's just a simple thing to flip it around. If not, we'll never speak of this again. This is the same design, but a slightly different light from what I put on the truck. What I'm thinking I'm going to do is, this is the one that's supposed to do a better spotlight, and from testing this has got a much better bright spot in the middle. The other ones are very diffused. So what I'm thinking of doing is putting one of these on the motorcycle and one on the truck, and then taking one of the wides off of the truck and putting it on the motorcycle. So I'll have one really bright center focused one and one a wide one, and we'll see how that goes. These are fairly tight. I wouldn't have expected that. Somebody had their cordless wrench turned up too high. If you got a well-designed gasket system, you don't have to crank them down, is what I'm thinking. But let's see. Probably could have taken the other end off first, but you know, whatever. Since these are tight, I'm making sure I get them pushed into the socket all the way so you don't strip it out. You missed it. I had the camera not running. I went to grab my cup here to refill it, my lemonade. Bumblebee was sitting down inside, so as I picked up the cup, it just came shooting right up in my face. Screamed like a little girl. I'm sure it wasn't good for the bee either, but I'll never speak of it again. Okay, nice casting, nicely made rubber gasket. The front face is held in with a rubber seal there. Guess we gotta take the whole thing apart. Wouldn't have it any other way, right? Yeah, that's a lot tighter than I'd expect for a screw that small. But we can deal with that. So yeah, what I'm hoping is these are symmetrical enough that I can just flip it. That would be ideal. Now that I've said that, I don't know which one I wanted to flip. If nothing else, it's always fun to take something apart that's brand new and never been used. Let's destroy something that works. My parents would be so proud. I was the kid who was always in trouble for taking my toys apart. Finally, at some point, I don't remember exactly how old I was, but they gave up, kinda, and bought me tools so that I could put things back together after I took them apart. 9 years in the military, fixing jets. 3 years for the Postal Service, fixing mail delivery vehicles. I guess that worked out okay. Let's try the little one. And for the 1% of YouTube who doesn't know, put it in this way for more torque so you can break the screw loose. After it's loose, you turn it around, or whatever's convenient for you, but if you turn it this way, it's easier to turn it out instead of going round and round and round and round and round and round. Same number of turns, but you know. What I'm suspecting, this may not go as well as I think, because even though it's symmetrical, if I flip it around, the wire is going to come out this way, which is not what I want. Unless I decide to get really crazy and completely disassemble it and rewire it and everything. Okay, that slides out. And the screw actually did go into that, so it won't come off. Okay, on this side, wire comes in. It's soldered onto two pads there. Take these two out, and then this whole light comes off, and then I could reverse it, but I don't have a left and a right. Which is a downer? Oh, we're here anyway. Let's take a look. Earlier set, they only gave me one Allen wrench, which was the one for the bracket for these. It's interesting now that I've got all three. The longest ones, coarse thread, are to hold this part together. It's good to pay attention when you're taking screws out so you don't have to mess around with it later. Nothing worse than getting finished and then realizing you needed the short one or the long one that you already used somewhere else. Okay, so that's what the board looks like. Oh, I just thought of something. Okay. They probably, oh, maybe it's just friction. Yeah, they got heatsink paste. Okay, so I could flip this around, but that will leave me with the wire going on the right side, but going up instead of down. Not sure how I feel about that. I'm going to walk it over to the motorcycle just like this and see if that's going to bother me. I might leave this one upside down. Be right back. Oh, boogers, I just thought of something. Hold that thought. Okay, I'm going to leave it the way that it was originally made, but I'm glad I took the time to look. Now I've got a better idea how they put these together too, which is useful. I'll be able to look at these screenshots later if I decide to. It's kind of cool. They actually numbered each element, so number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 20, 21, okay, and so on. Get an idea of the layout of the components and the sizes of some of the parts and so on. D for diode, R for resistor, C for capacitor. So it's got its own voltage regulation built right onto the board. It's kind of cool. I don't know. Okay, B, you can go away. I don't know as much as I wish I did about electronics, so I'm not going to try to confuse or delight anybody with my knowledge, because that doesn't go very far. But it does look like a well-made board. You know, you don't see things just hacked together like some of the boards you see. It's a nice touch that they actually used heatsink grease underneath the LEDs. You know, it didn't cost them much to do that, but they took the time to actually do it. Okay, now the wind is going to blow. Anyway, so yeah, I looked at the motorcycle again and decided switching the wire around wouldn't have any advantage for me. It's not that big of a deal, so at least not yet. Maybe in the future. And the other thing is, my thinking, I'm going to put probably one spot and one flood on the motorcycle. So, and then I'll have one spot for the truck, is my thinking. Now the tricky part going back together, okay, these, let's see if it'll show up. Down inside right here, there's a little rubber seal, and there is a groove for it. So I don't know if I'm going to be clever enough to get that back together to where it seals or not. I think if I slide it out a little bit, get all the crap out of there. Yeah, I think if I slide this out a little bit, then I can kind of hold it. Maybe. This is the kind of stuff that drives you crazy when you take something apart that you probably shouldn't have. But that's where all the fun is. Anyway, yeah, my earlier assumption, yes, they are essentially symmetrical, except your wire is going to end up going up instead of down when you flip it around to the other side. That may work for you, it may not. Okay, that part, not so good. A little dab of grease would be wonderful, something like that. Old mechanic's trick. When you don't have enough hands to hold everything together, you blob some grease on it, and then you slide it together, and the grease will kind of have enough grip to hold things in place for you. Doesn't always work the first time, but eventually you get it. You can't smell it, but I can. There's coffee brewing inside. I don't necessarily need coffee right now, but it'll be nice in the morning when I can just nuke a cup instead of waiting for the whole pot to brew. Got about 30 cups going. Okay, I'm gonna have to, I think what I'll do, I'll flip this upside down. Nope, that's not going to work either. Trust me, it'll work. I just can't show you that it worked. I suspect the guys that had leaking lights on Amazon's reviews, these pieces probably didn't get put in. By the look of it, this probably won't leak. I blame this on industrial espionage. Nobody would steal this design. Also, it's a pretty good chance they would have a special tool or a jig for putting this together. Stop, camera. Come back later. Between fighting off the bee, which is trying to get my lemonade. Anyway, I do think I got the trick here. I left just a little bit sticking up and then got it started, and I'm going to try to push it in there. I think it'll work now. If I watch from the back end to make sure that it stays where the groove is, it could be pretty close. Okay, it's still stuck out a little bit. In theory, that'll probably leak. I wonder if I can try it again and get it a little bit better. I really don't want to start over on it again. They say it always goes better the second and third time. When you're in the first time, you really don't want to do it again. And it's, well, in theory, it's just going to keep it from bouncing anyway, right? I still think some of these seals, they work better at keeping the water in than keeping the water out. Got some other lights, actually the factory lights on the truck. Looked at them one day and they're full of water. The water couldn't get out, but somehow it got in. Like, how is that possible? Yeah, that seems to be it. If I leave it sticking out just a little bit, that gives me enough to get it started. I'm so glad I restarted the camera to get this part. I think a lot of my videos are going to be titled, "This is why you shouldn't do something." That could be a big selling point. Or this will inspire you to do it because you know you're better than I am. I'm okay with that too. Rubber has enough grip that it really doesn't move. Okay, I got this end sticking up just a little tiny bit, and it sticks out just a little bit on that end. I think that's good enough. Okay, we'll call that good. Little ones go in here. That locks the glass in place. That also means that that seal is probably bigger and thicker than it needs to be, because these could lock the glass in place. But the seal is about half that size. Just saying. So I'll buzz these in. A fun geek project for later. Remake this piece on the 3D printer, on a mirror image it. Just because it doesn't necessarily have to be metal, as long as you got the heat sink. Okay. You might think this is a total waste of time. It might be. But Curious minds, right? Funny side story, I got some PWM dimmers in the mail recently. I don't remember exactly, this week and last week or whatever. And I tested them on this light, I think it was. They worked just fine. Which, I don't know. Is there any reason to dim an off-road light? My thinking though, something like these make just an amazing flashlight. So one of my side projects is looking for better light elements that I can use on my 18 volt Bosch flashlight battery. Because I've got 18 volt drill. These are the old NiCads already, not even nickel metal hydrates. So 18 volt drill, 18 volt cordless saw, 18 volt recip saw. The first one was a circular saw and then a recip saw, and 2 or 3 flashlights. Well, I got enough extra batteries, so I bought the flashlights just for out here. Because, you know, I know it's freaking dark out here, and it's just nice to have an extra light that's, you know, big enough that's not going to blow away in the wind or something like that. And these are pretty substantial. So I've been looking at them, and the old tech light bulbs that came with them, not very good, right? So I keep looking at what do I have that would be better, and pretty much everything is better, but these work really nice on there. So it's a little bit overkill, but I might buy another set of these just for the purpose of attaching it to a flashlight. So take off the original flashlight head and bolt one of these on in place. Bolt or graft somehow. Kind of go around when you're tightening those. Don't just crank it all down in one spot. This has a nice little detail in there, so line that up, get it set. Anyway, anything with a gasket, don't just crank one down and then crank the next one down. Get them all started, get them all down flat, and then tighten them in kind of a sequence. I mean, it's more important if you're putting an engine together, but theory still holds with something like this. And if it's trying to be a waterproof gasket, the reasoning is, in case nobody ever told you, if you tighten the first one down all the way, it'll sit crooked, and then tightening the other ones will just make them tight. It won't make it sit any better. So by taking them all down in stages, you can get it to sit flat. Then it'll work better. That way the gasket actually has a chance, because the way a gasket works, if it's, you know, crooked, it doesn't have a chance of keeping the water out. That's the whole idea. There we go. Get them all started. And then once they're started, I'll run them down until they just kind of touch, and get them all 3 touching, and then I'll snug them up and then maybe go around one more time. Now this doesn't have to hold high pressure. You just wanted to get it kind of flat, so they were just kind of barely touched. So I stopped, do the other one. And these were really tight. Now, one thought there, if I ever was going to take these apart, and I actually don't have it now that I think about it, a little bit of Loctite would be a really good idea on here. Just a drop on each screw, so because these are going to vibrate like crazy, especially on the motorcycle, and eventually they'll all fall out. So their idea of just really cranking them down, probably not a bad idea, except in this is, you know, fairly inexpensive aluminum castings probably. So if you crank them down too much, you run the risk of damaging the threads, which are just cut into the aluminum. There was no inserts in there. So not a good idea to kill them too much. Loctite would be a lot smarter. Didn't see any Loctite on the screws when I took it apart. Loctite works kind of like a glue, and it'll keep the thing from vibrating loose, but you can still get it apart if you need to. Alright, no horse for wear. These front four just basically are there to put some pressure on that glass to help them seal. Don't want to kill it too much. Because what it's doing now is compressing that seal, which would help a little bit. Good enough. Now we know what's inside. Taking a break. I worked today. Not very hard, but still I worked.